Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you on as well. We've got some great kind of topics lined up that we're going to discuss. To start off with, I think a great introduction. If you could tell us about the formation of Green Jade Games and kind of the gap in the market you're targeting when you started the firm.
Absolutely, one of my favorite topics. You can always get me talking about this. So Green Jade is a relatively young company in the grand scheme of things. It's 2 years old really independently, and sort of 3 years old from the creation of the company. So we actually created the company to solve a gap, to actually create content to fill a gap we found in the market. It's something that Jesper and I had a shared vision on, in that we felt there was another opportunity to build a different type of games for players. And quite frankly, we had a desire to add something new. We'd been managing casinos and hadn't seen an awful lot of change in the recent times. And, we looked at data to support our sort of theories. We saw that in Sweden, which is fairly representative of many European countries, around 7% of players of population play slots. So it's certainly not mainstream. More than 70%, up to 80%. Enjoy some form of gambling. We know they're playing lottery or bingo, so some kind of opportunity to risk money to make money through entertainment. And further than that, I mean, this is accelerating further, but 90% plus play video games, casual games, or social games weekly. So we kind of said there's an opportunity, a significant opportunity there to merge the two. So really, we created the company to address that, and that's certainly the gap in the market that we're targeting, is that the hyper-casual social games market for players who have a propensity to gamble, who aren't currently being served by the existing games that are out there.
Certainly, I mean, when we talk about kind of, we're looking at kind of competition, but innovation. Certainly, some things we've heard over the years a lot is that games haven't really changed. The market hasn't really changed. And something I wanted to ask you, which I know you've got an opinion on, is how would you describe the makeup of the industry generally, and what you've just been discussing, given it's been affected by consolidation, so you kind of maybe have less choice as a result of that too?
I mean, I don't want my answer to be a slight on other companies out there. It's certainly not. But there is very much a cookie cutter sort of approach to creating games. Everyone has the intention of doing something different and innovative, and quite often it's repackaging the same product with a different name, maybe different commercials around it. The quality of slot content has absolutely improved in I've been in gaming 15, 16 years, something like that. And I've seen a massive sort of growth and progression in the quality of games. But if we look at the makeup of the existing industry, obviously we're seeing that not all of these companies can survive. Very much it's a case where companies need to make as much return on their games as they can, but when everyone's got the same opportunity to make money, which is putting lots of content into the market, everyone is sort of making it more difficult for the others. So we're seeing a fair bit of consolidation. And I think, consolidation it's a natural part of both a boom and consolidate cycle. We've seen for years, lots of small companies getting big enough to acquire. They're growing, they're having a really good success. And their next stage for growth is actually through acquisition. That's following a normal pattern. It's been like that for years, and we don't see that ever changing. The formation of our industry, if we look at the big sort of original, the oligopolistic companies, OPAP, Intralot, in the UK, it'd be Camelot. These are massive companies which dominate domestic markets, and they create the opportunity for smaller companies to come in, be innovative, be different, be priced differently, and then they grow, and they get to a certain state, and they can't grow any further without acquisition. So it's a natural cycle. I think we'll see this consolidation happen for another couple of years maybe, and then you'll see some some of these early entrepreneurs will have an exit from their last company, and they'll go back out there and start creating again. And hopefully we'll see more entrepreneurs entering our space and being more creative, coming from video games or coming from complementary spaces. But whilst there's investors willing to back these companies and these entrepreneurs, we're going to continue to see this cycle. Right now, we're just in that consolidation phase.
Certainly, yeah. When it comes to both consolidation and the performance of the market in general, we look at slots. One company that obviously we can't ignore that's really made its mark on the industry, made an impact is Evolution. In your
Yeah.
view, kind of given the kind of things you've discussed, how has Evolution performed so well? And you know, you may not be privy to any the secret source as such, but you know, it's the question a lot of people are asking: how have they done this well? What strategy kind of worked for them?
I wish I was privy to their secret sauce, but no, certainly. I mean, looking as an outsider in, I've got an opinion on what I've seen, both as a player, so you know, consuming their product through casinos, but then being a customer managing casinos. They've done a few things well. First of all, they identified a gap. They spotted that you could successfully combine an experience with land-based casinos, you know, and online casinos, and you could, you know, make that something real. It's something that it didn't exist. A lot of people were skeptical about whether there was a market for it, but they executed, you know, from the outside in, it looks like flawlessly. They built an exceptional organization. I think having the right people in the right roles with the right vision and the attitude or purpose, let's say, to execute, that's kind of what's given them that market opportunity. And that's fantastic. Like, kudos to them.
Absolutely, yeah. And using Evolution as a reference point, how is a Green Jade Games looking to stand out in the market, but also looking at the industry more widely? How should any onlooking suppliers maybe use Evolution and take what they did well and see if they can apply it to their own kind of model?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, you can't, you know, you can't replicate exactly what they did. They were there at a specific time and a place. And technology has slightly changed as well, and certainly how operators approve, you know, relate with or you know, consume providers has changed a little bit as well. But I think, you know, being bold, I think we've got the opportunity to be the next evolution, to kind of follow in their steps and say, you know, we're going to create a category of content that customers haven't realized that they want, whether the customer is the operator or the end consumer. We're going to build a product, put it out there, hopefully execute flawlessly, and use Evolution as someone who's trodden that path, had a successful impact, very positive impact on our industry, and you know, created a product solution for a market that has grown from strength to strength. So I think having the right gap is kind of key. Understanding, you know, what is the product that doesn't exist that needs to exist. Obviously, will we be as big? You know, of course, I don't have any sort of vision for the future, but we're going to do everything we can to be as positive an impact to our industry as we can be.
And to that end, looking at you guys specifically, have you got any kind of new ventures or product launches upcoming, maybe the remainder of this year and maybe a little bit beyond that?
I wish I could say we were timing this one with you know, a launch coming up next week or next month. We're developing all the time, and we've taken the last couple of years to build, measure, learn, constantly releasing you know, small iterations on arcade games, each with a new variation to the previous title, to understand how operators can monetize such a game, but how customers consume it. How often do they play? How often do they come back and play, to look to the game to play again? Because, you know, when there's only 2 or 3 titles out there, you may have sort of a fairly good interest in it, but when there's no alternative to it, you might just completely forget about that game genre. So what we're working on right now is actually, you know, a category, a vertical, where we're building you know, 10, 12, 15 arcade games where we're going to put them out concurrently, not do one after another and just kind of drip feed in. You know, I think it's really important now, given our learnings, given our understanding, given the relationships we have with operators, we're very blessed in that regard, to bring to the market an entire suite. So that's what we're working on now, and you know, we've got that. A number of titles already built. I'm desperate to kind of share and you know, sort of show off our new shiny toys, but we're kind of keeping stum a little bit and you know, categorizing them together to launch all at the same time.
Sure. What kind of an appetite is there from players for this kind of I guess is it fair to call it a new vertical that you're trying to create?
No, absolutely. I would say it's definitely a new vertical. Very difficult to measure the appetite, and this is one of the things we're constantly researching. There's whole heaps of complementary, research papers from alternative industries which indicate that there's more and more money being, not indicate, it's certainly factual. More adults are spending disposable income on hyper casual social games with no opportunity to withdraw. But they're willing to invest that money as part of that entertainment experience. And we're saying, well, let's take those same games and elevate that experience. So it's not it's a well overused adage, but when Henry Ford says, if you ask your customers what do you want, they'd say more horses. They couldn't imagine, well, let's build a car. And I'm not saying we're building a car, we're not revolutionizing a brand new space, we're just amalgamating two to three different industries to build a very cohesive, relevant product. Measuring the players looking for it, it's difficult to say, but we're obviously, we have our own data based on showing how many people return to the games, and the average number of game rounds on our latest arcade skill games are higher than that of our slots. So certainly they're appreciated in that regard.
No, absolutely makes sense. In terms of whether it's arcade games, different types of slot games, as a developer, we can't not talk about regulation. In any interview, in fact, with pretty much with any gambling company that we interview, we can't really fail to mention it. And
it's a massive part of our day, isn't it?
Absolutely, so. Yeah. And from your point of view, kind of how do the different regulatory requirements, kind of perhaps of various markets, impact your business?
Yes, I mean, it's the right question to ask because it's such a fast changing environment, and it does affect everyone differently. I think one interesting observation to make, which maybe isn't made that commonly, is actually the lack of regulation in complementary markets. I was just talking about, the hyper casual social games or the mobile game industry. There's an awful lot of revenues being put into these games, and that's a fantastic change in our times. This didn't exist 7-8 years ago, but those industries have no oversight. They have no player protection measures in place, whether it's trying to protect that player from playing for too long or spending beyond their means. So I've no two ways about it. Regulation is good. It's a very difficult concept, it's a very difficult element of our space to keep a pace with, because it changes so frequently, but it also changes because we're consistently looking to grow or sustain revenues. So if we want to enter a new market, for example, we're going through the regulations for Italy and Greece right now, we see we need to adapt our games. That's expensive. It's a significant cost to a small company to go back and actually retroactively make changes to software. But it's something that we're more than willing to do because it helps promote responsible gambling. The elements we're putting into the game, are for the player. At least that's what we always hope for, that there's no sort of second agenda. Any change we put in there is based on research, and it's for us to do a better job, a more responsible job of keeping our industry sustainable and when well regulated. And culturally, something that Green Jade Games has been founded on is that responsibility to the player. I mean, co-founder Jesper, when he was at Mr. Green, invested in multiple schemes to improve player protection, and but he consulted experts. He would work with sort of people who understood addiction as an illness, understood the commercial side of the gambling space, and implemented changes there to protect players based on data. So having that conversation with the player. So we have that in our culture, in our DNA. We're really sort of cognizant that we're in an industry which has the illness of addiction linked to it, and no one wants to profit from someone who's suffering with an illness. But so we'll do what we can to adapt and sort of help protect the player for sure.
Yeah, that ties nicely into the next question I was going to ask, which I think you've sort of definitely sort of started the conversation on anyway. It's something we've asked a few different suppliers recently. How can suppliers and developers like yourselves do more to promote responsible gambling? And what kind of things can you do? You mentioned obviously Jesper signing up to a number of initiatives. Is there things you can do in the kind of game design? I mean, it's
Yeah,
for you
certainly.
to,
I think it's really important to have that conversation with the operator as well. So,
Mhm.
the operator, I'm not putting the onus completely on them, but the operator has access to data that we don't have access to. We don't know anything about the player outside of their gameplay habits on our games. So we can see how long they play for. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they're doing on other games outside of that. And I think that's a really sort of important acknowledgement to make. There are changes we can make. But the greatest sort of opportunity for player protection comes from the operator, and we'll do anything we can to help support them sort of implement those protection measures within the gameplay experience. So, yeah, I mean, and to use an example, if you're a wine manufacturer, making your wine taste worse or packaging it in plastic and leaving it in the sun isn't likely to change an alcoholic's desire to get drunk. So building a terrible gambling experience isn't going to stop a gambler from gambling, irresponsibly as we'd see it within society. Or spending too long, playing games, being distracted from other duties, doing your job, raising a family, whatever it might be. So I think the comparison is, let's build the best games we can build, but work with the retail outlet on ensuring that we know as much about the customer as possible, or if relevant, let's say, without overstepping, so as to serve that customer in the best way, make sure that we're not being a negative impact on their lives.
Yeah, it's definitely a broader kind of jigsaw that you touched on, many sort of parts at play, and I think that is a key point to make, in that prohibiting something, as history teaches us, won't reduce, really probably won't even reduce the consumption of it at all. And
no.
Then we kind of go into the whole black market debate, and actually,
and there's something to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Moving to a final topic I wanted to talk to you about, moving to maybe a more internal to the business kind of question. Seeing as we're here sort of speaking over Zoom, it's kind of an apt question to ask. Looking at kind of post-COVID work life, and I think that's still more of a long-term question, especially in the UK. We're kind of we're toing and froing as to when exactly post-COVID life will start. But what is Green Jade Games' approach going to be to remote working and the kind of things that have started during the pandemic, once the pandemic hopefully comes to an end?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it comes to an end. Like, let's we don't know what the future holds again, but we can work towards a better, safer future for everyone. Yeah. So I think the main point is as many other companies have, we've proven it's possible. Working with these companies has ensured that. Working with these colleagues in any location. So we've got colleagues based in 5 different countries around Europe. So sort of mostly on the same time zone, but without any interruption, let's say, to the quality of the work. Everyone has the access to the same tools. Everyone has the same development opportunities. And that was what I was kind of most concerned about. And obviously, outside of the more prosaic sort of, let's be able to do our jobs to the best of our abilities, understanding how being remote would affect mental health as well, because we do place so much onus and importance, rightly, in communities and the people around us, and an office location is not removed from that as being part of a community. So we found that we could hire people with great confidence remotely that we maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity to before. And I think, it's when you're looking just at domestic market, especially Malta, nothing wrong with Malta, but it's a small country, so you do have a limited workforce. So COVID has proven that we can go out there and find sort of exceptional talent in Croatia, Ukraine, Russia, Germany, wherever they may be, to complement us and make our business stronger. So yeah, Tim, obviously you can't take away the value of human interaction. That's key. Like, that face-to-face is such an important part of understanding someone and sort of building that bond, that relationship, and onboarding people into a company. It's much easier when they're sat elbow to elbow and you're sort of pointing at a screen rather than sort of trying to track a mouse on a shared screen. But we found that it is absolutely possible to build and flourish even remotely.
Sure. So do you think the pandemic has maybe inadvertently led to maybe some permanent kind of changes and more of a flexibility to remote working moving forward?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think there's many companies now who would identify themselves as being sort of a digital first company. There will be periods of transition. I was speaking to an industry friend today who was talking about colleagues going back into their office staggered from September onwards. So there's already plans for some of the larger organizations to officially have that transition process. But at the same time, that company will also acknowledge that, do you know what? They didn't fold. They kept going. So if they have to be, they can be a digital first company where everyone's remote, everyone has access to central resources, and that it's not such a negative factor. So, I mean, our approach will absolutely change. We're going to keep the Malta office as being a place that we have a desk for you if you want to come in. But if you wish to work from home, work from home. We have to have that trust in the employee, of course, to do their job. And on the counter side, that employee has to have the trust in us as an employer that we're not going to forget about them, that they're still there. We're still sort of cognizant of what their needs are and how they can contribute and have an opinion and share that with us. And so it's a two-way thing. I think we can definitely continue as is, and encourage people to take the route that's best for them and most comfortable for them.
No, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense, and you've kind of encapsulated the balance between the two there. Ben, thanks very much for joining us and for all your answers and insight.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Tim.